In these last videos, I've been considering longevity and just sharing my ideas and thoughts. And in the first one, I considered the big ideas of what are these major domains of thought we need to have in order to create actions that allow us to live long and healthy lives. After that, I've started going through these first domains of thought and really getting down to the specific actions of what we need to do in order to live long and healthy lives in terms of the way we sleep, eat, and train. When I began this journey, this was probably the hardest domain for me to even have any clue how we can go forward and improve the quality of our thinking lives in a way that inspires us and allows us to live long and healthy lives. But with each step of progress that I've made in the domain of thinking, I don't think any of these actions have been more powerful for me. And I'm including the fact that a few years ago, I did not really have great habits of daily exercise. I did not have quality diet habits. I was definitely not sleeping 8 hours a night. And changes in those domains have been amazing. They've truly changed my life and made me a happier person. But none has done that more powerfully than changing the way I think. Now, all of this entire journey began maybe like 4 years ago or so when I really started thinking about meaning in life and how can we live lives that when we reach the end of our lives, we feel like our lives were filled with meaning and we have no regrets. My first conclusion there is step number one is agency. If we don't have agency over our lives, then we're just at the whim of fate, and it makes us truly despondent and helpless people. In the realm of thinking, the most important change we can make is the change from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Now, this is probably something everyone here is clear about. Just in case, the idea came maybe like 20 years ago, maybe a little more than that, from Carol Dweck. And the idea is that some people go through life with this fixed mindset, and we all represent it sometimes. We represent a fixed mindset when we say things like, I'm bad at this, or I could never do this. I'll tell you, I hear fixed mindset from people on a daily basis because as a math teacher, as soon as you strike up a conversation, one of the natural first questions is, what do you do professionally? And as soon as you tell someone you're a math teacher, I'll tell you at least 95% of people respond with one of two things. I was terrible at math, or I loved math. Everyone that responds with either of those things is displaying a fixed mindset. If you were terrible at math, it displays the fact that you really believe you could never improve your interaction with the field of mathematics. And if you're saying, I loved math, you're kind of stating the fact that you have this natural talent that is inborn in you and you were good at it from the beginning. Any math teacher will tell you the best predictor of the grades at the end of the year is the pre-assessment at the start of the year. It's really the amount of content knowledge people bring into the course in the beginning guides them through the course in order to having higher levels of success at the end of the course. All of this is just to say we need to break these fixed mindset ideas and move towards this growth mindset. Growth mindset is simply the idea that I can do anything that I want to work at daily. If this is interesting, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe. It'll just help me get this out to more people. Clearly, I understand we have limitations. There's probably very few 80-year-olds that can set a goal of downhill skiing and make it. For me personally, I've been working on handstand for a long time now. And honestly, I can do handstand, like freestanding handstand in the middle of the room. But what I've learned is now I'm getting arthritis in my wrist, and handstand is probably just not a healthy thing for me to engage in. So I can do anything, but I do have physical limitations. Growth mindset applies the most wonderfully when we consider our thinking lives. You can change anything about your thinking life. All of us have these internal scripts that are running all the time, and some of our internal scripts are truly evil. No one is more critical of us than ourselves. I'm going to get to it in a moment, and you can change that, but you have to believe that you can. You have to believe in the growth mindset and that through daily small practices, you affect changes that lead to long-term growth. So if we want to lead long and healthy lives, then in the domain of the way we think in order to support that goal, I believe the first step is growth mindset. And the second step comes to us from the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations tells us, never let anyone hear you complain, even yourself. Now, I know this one is so hard for so many people. It's a move away from the fact that the world impacts us and a move towards we impact the world. Now, complaining outwardly is obviously just annoying, and there are some times that emotionally it feels good and we need to allow other people to vent. Perhaps we need to even allow ourselves to vent when emotions are deep. I totally understand that, but I believe it's destructive. Every time we complain, we make ourselves the victim of all the things going on in the world. Well, there's only two possibilities in whatever happened to us that we dislike and want to complain about. Either we had agency in this thing in the first place, in which case we did this to ourselves. We shouldn't complain. We should simply change those actions. Or the second possibility is we truly didn't have any agency. This is especially sad when we see children in hard situations and we know that child did nothing to deserve this situation. Well, I honestly have no idea what we can say to those children, but as adults, we can see this situation better. And one of the things Epictetus tells us is that when things happen that we have no control over, all we can do is accept those things. And actually he goes beyond and say, we need to love those things. For example, he says, if I get sick, well, I don't want to be sick. I might not have had any agency over this. Maybe I simply got sick. So I can accept that, and that's fine. But what I need to do is love that. It's the only story that my life will have, is being sick in that moment. And so if I don't love that moment, I'm simply choosing not to love my life. And I know this sounds strange, loving the fact that bad things happen to you. But here's the point. There is no choice. Very similar idea to this comes to us from Buddhist teachings. There's a meme in Buddhist circles that I really, really love. It has this person holding up two signs and they're saying like, what is the difference? And one of the signs says like difficulty and trials. And the other one says happiness and successes. And then in the next frame of the meme, the enlightened person responds, they're the same picture. This is the idea of loving our fate. That happiness and success can never result in your life without those difficulties and trials. So let's go ahead and love all the things that happen to us. And I know the things that happen to us can be terrible, but there is no choice. It's the only story you'll ever have. You can love it or hate it, but you're choosing to love or hate your life. So to improve our domain of thinking in order to live long and happy lives, step 1 is growth mindset. And step 2 to me is never let anyone complain, even yourself. And I really believe that's the exact same idea as loving your fate. Those two principles are kind of like the foundation upon which everything else is built. And when you've laid that foundation, then all of a sudden life begins to get so much more exciting, so much more joyful, so much more peaceful. Really, you begin to engage in your life in a way that is wonderful. And the next step in our thinking lives is a set of practices. Now, these set of practices need to be things that we do on a daily basis that allows us to gain agency over our thoughts. Some people feel that this is impossible. Well, the first shift in perspective I would give you comes from Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. In that book, he talks about the speaker being the person in our head that just continues talking and talking and going all the time, and it's solving problems and oftentimes doing great things and sometimes telling us destructive thoughts and whatever. It's always going unless we take agency and stop it. Many people identify with that person in their head that's talking all the time and they feel like that's them. I would look at that and say, that person inside is a tool. It's almost like a subconscious streaming commentary. The Power of Now, Tolle calls that person the speaker, but he says there's a person behind that person inside of us called the watcher or the witness. And so these practices are practices in stepping back from the speaker and becoming the watcher or witness. The more time we spend there, the more agency we gain over the speaker. For me, the first step in this is I was able to shut down those destructive thoughts. I used to have these thoughts all the time. 1,000 times a day telling me like, oh, stupid, you're so stupid, you do stupid things. It was actually my AP Calculus students, maybe like 10 or 12 years ago, that pointed it out to me. And they said, Mr. Sama, you are not stupid. Like you just made a mistake on the whiteboard or whatever it was. And it took me a while to internalize that actually. I had to think about it and go back and say, I do make mistakes on the whiteboard. I make mistakes between people when I'm speaking to them. I make all kinds of really stupid mistakes. But it doesn't change the fact that I am not stupid. You're absolutely right. The stupid things I do come from a lack of attention to the things that I'm doing. But when I give quality attention and I really consider what are the best actions to take, well, I rarely make bad mistakes. So through these practices of sitting back and becoming that watcher or witness behind the speaker, I was able to take control of these thoughts and evolve. And what I found is not only was I able to shut down those destructive thoughts, I was able to replace those thoughts with whatever I wanted to put in place. Now, personally, as a Christian, my choice of replacing those thoughts was with thoughts like, God, you're so wonderful. Lord, I thank you for this world in existence. Or in certain situations, Lord, help me. And I don't mean that I intentionally think these thoughts. What I mean is, those are the thoughts I chose to replace instead of the destructive script that was running all the time. So here's what I'm saying in summation. You want to improve your thinking life in order to live a longer and healthier life. Step one is getting down that foundation. You really need to sit and wrestle with the different ways that you display a fixed mindset, and you need to evolve and change that and become a growth mindset oriented person. This is a daily battle. I still find ways that I see myself enacting a fixed mindset all the time. And then step two, just never allow yourself to complain. Even in your head to yourself, you have to kill complaints. Complaints are direct statements of unhappiness, and what we realize is they're us choosing to be unhappy. To me, that was much easier. When I realized that I have no interest in complaining ever again, it's easier to just recognize when complaints happen and kill them. And then once we have that foundation down, we need practices that allow us to become the watcher behind the speaker. And through spending daily time being that watcher behind the speaker, eventually we gain agency. Now, before I give you those practices, I'll tell you, this is a time-consuming daily activity. These are going to be meditation practices. And honestly, you can't meditate for 30 minutes and get there. You can't sit and meditate for a day and get there. These are practices of daily actions for months and months, maybe for some people, years and years, before you gain agency and realize what a powerful person you've become. The specific set of meditations I'm talking about are called focus meditations. And I actually have a video series that walks through like scaffolded practices that you could go and enact. If you're interested in doing this work, here it is on screen. Stoic Yogi out.